part practicing the parts. Here's the thing, deciding to use parts only solves half the problem, because there's more than one way to break a skill down, and they're genuinely different. In their influential 1985 review of skill training methods, Whiteman and Lintern sorted part practice into 3 approaches. First, fractionalization. For a skill where your 2 arms or 2 legs are doing different things at the same time, you practice each limb by itself before combining them. Second, segmentation, also called the progressive part method or the chaining method, where you practice part 1, then part 2, then 1 and 2 together, then add the next part, building up to the whole. Third, simplification, which keeps the skill whole but reduces its difficulty. That one's big enough that it gets all of part 3. Whichever you pick, there's a design principle from Chapter 13 you must honor. The part practice has to produce positive transfer, both between the parts you practice and from those parts back to the whole skill. A breakdown that doesn't transfer to the whole is wasted effort. Let's take the first 2 methods in turn, starting with fractionalization.
This is the map for the whole of Part 2, the 3 ways to break a skill down, straight from Whiteman and Lintern's 1985 review. On the left, fractionization. For a skill where the 2 arms or legs do different things, you practice each limb separately, then combine them. In the middle, segmentation, the chaining or progressive part method. Practice part 1, then 1 plus 2, then 1, 2, 3, adding links until you have the whole. On the right, simplification. Keep the skill whole but make it easier. That one is big enough that it earns all of part 3. And read the line across the bottom because it governs all 3 methods. Design every breakdown for positive transfer back to the whole skill. A part drill that does not rebuild into the real thing is wasted practice. Let's take them one at a time, starting with fractionization.
Fractionization is the method for skills where your 2 hands or 2 feet have to do different things at the same time. To understand why it's tricky, recall something from Chapter 5. Our limbs have a natural tendency to move together, spatially and temporally. That's why a symmetrical skill, where both arms do the same thing, the arm pull in the breaststroke, a flutter kick, is highly organized and best practiced as a whole. You're working with the body's natural coupling. The challenge comes with asymmetrical skills, where each hand must do something different, fighting that natural tendency. Playing the guitar, violin, accordion, piano, or drums, the tennis serve, the side stroke in swimming. For these, fractionization means practicing each arm or hand on its own before combining them. The evidence is genuinely mixed. There's support for both whole and part here. But if you do fractionize, research points to one clear tip. Start with the harder hand, the one performing the more difficult or complex movement. There's also a fascinating exception from Kurtz and Lee in 2003. Learners of a 2 against 3 polyrhythm did best when they practiced one hand at a time while listening to the rhythm of both hands together, a kind of part-whole hybrid. The discrete, rhythmic nature of that task probably explains the twist.
The second part practice method is segmentation, which you'll more often hear called the progressive part method or chaining, and it fixes a real weakness of plain part practice. If you drill every part in isolation, the learner can struggle to reassemble them into the whole. Chaining avoids that. You practice part 1 as its own unit, then part 2, first by itself, then immediately join to part 1, then part 3, join to 1 and 2. Each part progressively links into a growing chain until the learner is doing the whole skill. The textbook's example is the breaststroke. It splits naturally into 2 parts, the leg kick and the arm action, and the genuinely hard part is timing them together. So you let the swimmer learn each part alone first, with low attention demand, then chain them and pour attention into the coordination. Segmentation is tailor-made for skills that are really sequences. Waters in 1992 showed it helped people learn an 8-key typing sequence. Ash and Holding in 1990 showed it for learning a piano score, where the progressive part method beat well practice. And interestingly, practicing the parts in an easy to difficult order beat difficult to easy. Build from the simple piece up.
Why does the progressive part method work so well? Because it captures the advantage of both part and whole practice at the same time, and avoids the downside of each. Think about what each pure method gives you. The part method's gift is reduced attention demand. The learner can focus all their attention on one piece without being overwhelmed by the entire skill. But its cost is that practicing parts in isolation can lose the coordination, the timing between parts that only exists when they run together.
The whole method is the mirror image. It preserves that crucial spatial and temporal coordination of the parts, but it can overwhelm a beginner's attention. The progressive part method threads the needle. By chaining, it keeps attention demands under control. You're never doing more than the current chain, while progressively rebuilding the coordination among the parts as they join into the whole. Low attention load and intact coordination together. That's the whole appeal, and it's why for sequential skills, the progressive part method is so often the right call.
Let me gather part 2. Once you've decided a skill calls for part practice, you still have to choose how, and Whiteman and Lintern give us 3 options: fractionization, segmentation, and simplification. Fractionization is for asymmetric two-handed or two-footed skills, where you practice each limb alone before combining, starting with the harder hand. Segmentation, the progressive part method, is for sequences. You chain parts together one at a time, ideally building from easy to difficult, so the whole reassembles cleanly. And the reason progressive part is so effective is that it combines the two pure method strengths, the low attention demand of part practice with the preserved coordination of whole practice. One quick aside worth carrying: when researchers studied a complex surgical task, bone plating, whole practice came out best. But among the part practice schedules, a random order beat a blocked one, a nice echo of the contextual interference from Chapter 16. Now to the third method, which is a different idea entirely. Keep the skill whole, just make it easier.